I've been a Moto Guzzi Griso owner for 5 years now, and I've done over 40,000 miles. In this video I just want to share with you all the issues that I had and all the things that I had to do to enjoy this bike to the fullest. I just wanted to use this video to say happy birthday to Moto Guzzi. As you can see, it's been established in 1921, so this year marks the 100 years of history from Moto Guzzi, so happy birthday. Well, my Griso is not with me at the moment. I would have loved to show you, as I talk through all the things that I've done in detail on the bike, but unfortunately he's at the bike shop and is getting like a half-life maintenance kind of thing, where I'm gonna have the clutch plates swapped out and a few other bits that I'm gonna do a separate video about. So for a start, I just want to tell you all the things that I had to change on the bike to make it better. And let's start with suspensions. So I had to drop the front suspensions on the second line to make it more reactive. That way the bike can lean into corners a little bit better. On the stock setting, I found that when I was trying to get into a corner, you kind of had to like really push the bike into the corner to make it lean down, and in full lean position you had to push to keep the bike down with you as you're doing the turn. But by dropping down a couple of lines on the front suspension, the bike is much more reactive, so change of the directions are much faster, and it kind of wants to lean into the corner. You don't really need to struggle to push it down, and I've just found that it was much better for me. I also raised the rear suspension because I found out that in the stock setting, having all that amount of torque available, let's not forget, is a 1200cc V-twin, so there's all the torque that you need. I found that when I was accelerating hard from a stop, the bike would sink at the rear a little bit. So by raising the rear suspension, now is much more reactive, and the counteracting that the shaft bar do keeps the bike perfectly balanced, and when you accelerate hard it just launches you forward without sinking at the rear, which is much better. One little buzz that I had to do on the wheels, I have spoked wheels, so there's little OR rubber seals around the spokes on the inside of the rims. Is a tubeless, so of course if you're a hard rider and you brake hard and accelerate hard, the air tends to escape from those seals, so I had to inflate my tires every 2 days. So one little buzz that I had to do was taking the tires off, and then I had to seal with proper silicone sealant around the spokes on the inside of the rim, on both front and rear, and that way I sealed the tires properly, and now they don't deflate as they used to do. On the rear, on top of the shaft, there is a reaction bar that is to avoid the shaft moving up as a result of forces when you accelerate. So that bar is bolted into the frame, and it keeps the shaft in position when you accelerate. But on top of the shaft, where this bar comes out, there is a rubber seal to keep the shaft oil in there. And I had a little bit of a leak of oil coming out of there, so again I had to use some silicone to properly seal it. You also might want to consider installing engine guards. That is because you have this V-twin sideways and is exposed completely. So if you drop the bike by accident, you can really damage the rocker cover, the heads of the cylinders. So you might want to consider installing some guards on the side. I dropped it a couple of times myself, and that really helped keeping the heads intact. Overall, I found that it's a pretty reliable bike, as long as you keep up with the regular maintenance. So, of course, changing the oil regularly, shaft oil, gear oil, engine oil. Make sure you have your valve clearance done at every maintenance interval, and you will find that you have little issues mechanically. They're really strong engines, they are really overbuilt, so they can take a lot of forces. I like to think of them almost like an agricultural machine, like a tractor. And that's it really in terms of reliability. Now, of course, all the other things that you swap out, like for customization, like levers or mirrors, fairings, that's all up to you. I've changed quite a bit on mine. I'd like to talk about you know, things that you can change, like the exhaust. In my experience, it's been great for a while, but it also hasn't. So I swapped the silencer for an aftermarket one, and the bike ran, and the bike really didn't run properly. That's because the fueling wasn't right. It did sound great, but it wasn't delivering power as it used to with the stock exhaust. And that's when my remapping story started, and it's been a bit of a nightmare. So for a start, I ordered an aftermarket air filter, obviously, because you're allowing the exhaust gases to escape faster. So you also want to change the intake to allow more air into the engine. And I had got myself one of these. So these are meant to be lifetime filters, and I changed this, and I will come back to this in 2 minutes. And of course, the second part of the remap was having an external ECU connected to properly remap the fueling. So I booked the bike into a remapping bike shop. We ordered a Dynojet Power Commander. It then took about 3 weeks to arrive from the US. We installed it, and while we were doing the remap on the dyno, there were some issues, and we think that it was the actual Dynojet. We think that it was the actual ECU that didn't run properly, because it was doing a little bit of a misfire around 5,000 RPM, as you can see in this video. So we decided to send that back. I've got my refund. A month went by, and then going online on forums, everyone was suggesting to get in touch with Beetle on the Griso forum to get a Beetle map. So I did that. The map was fine, was all good, but I found out that around 3,000 RPM the bike was a bit stuttery. So Beetle was amazing. It got me, a few versions of the map, but I could never get around to sort out the stuttering around 3,000 RPM. But anyway, I've been running with that map for a couple of years because I really like the sound and the power delivery on the mid to top range. And then a couple of years down the line, I decided to do a throttle body clean and balance. So I've opened it up to find out that there was, I don't know, maybe half a kilo worth of dust and dirt, and that's because of this. So I did clean this, every now and then, and there wasn't much dirt into it. The problem is this filter does not stop the same amount of dust and dirt that the stock filter does, and it just goes in. So hopefully it didn't do any damage to the engine, but I found that in the throttle body there was a lot of crap. So, personal experience, don't use this, use the stock ones. In 5 years and 40,000 miles I only had 2 fails. They actually got me stranded. The first one was the RPM sensor fail. The bike just couldn't read, the RPM of the engine, so it just cuts off the power. This started by the bike not being able to switch on in the morning. I had to, keep trying to switch it on for a few times before it did. And I just thought that, it was really cold in winter, so I just thought it was a bit of a cold start. And then as I was riding to work, it started to cut off, and then eventually it just stopped working. So I've ordered the new part in. It's a Magneti Marelli part. You can swap it yourself, it's really easy. I think it was about £40 for the spare part, and that was an easy fix. The second fail that I had that got me stranded was in Paris. It was a really hot summer. I was riding down to Italy. As I was entering Paris, I just noticed that my boots were really warm, so I looked down and there's oil everywhere. So I pull over as soon as I can, and I start to investigate. I thought there was one of the oil lines that sits in between the cylinders. Couldn't see any oil coming out of there. It was a Saturday afternoon in July in Paris, and it's been horrible. I tried to call for support and support wasn't really available. Thankfully there was a lady there that helped me to get in contact with a bike shop that did also Moto Guzzi. But the first place available to look at the bike was on Tuesday, so I had to find myself accommodations and whatnot. So I mean, it's been a real nightmare. And in the end, it was just the seals on the heads. You know, I could have sorted out myself if I knew what it was, but it was just oil everywhere. I could just not figure out where the oil was coming from. I didn't want to risk it. So I paid 400 euros to swap two gaskets, which is pretty annoying, but hey ho, I got back on the road and then I finished my journey. And that's when I also find out that if you put in the amount of oil that you're meant to, you know, to just under the maximum line, is too much, especially if you ride in warm condition. The oil will expand and it will find a way to come out from somewhere. So in my experience, I found that if you just sit under the middle of the level, that's perfect. If you change stock parts like levers, be really careful. I did that myself. I've been running, this particular one is an MZS. They're quite cheap. They are 30–40 pounds on Amazon. But I've seen good reviews. They are, you know, it looks really well made. But I've been running it for 3 years and I started to notice that the gears were a bit stiff, and I noticed that when the engine was warm I just couldn't get the bike into neutral, and it was really hard to find first gear as well sometimes. So I started to investigate and I found that the clutch lever was wearing out in the joint there, and thankfully it didn't snap. But imagine if this was the brake lever and it did snap, you know, all of a sudden. No good. So again, in my personal experience, keep the stock levers and don't buy these. I've lost count of how many of these I had to change. These are the bolts that go in the fairings, and I found that they are horrible. The heads just keep stripping. No matter how careful you are with the tools, they will just strip off. So if you are like me and you like to do a lot of maintenance yourself, grab a few from gutsybits.co.uk and be ready to swap them out. It does help if you use high quality tools because there's less tolerance, so when you put the tool in there's less risk of stripping the head off. I don't think there's any bike out there quite like the Griso. Personally, I love it. I've been testing other bikes, but there isn't a single bike that I will swap right now following my heart. Of course, if I was to swap the bike, it would be for, you know, practical reasons, like doing more touring. I would probably get something built for touring, like a Suzuki V-Strom. But yeah, my heart is still with the Griso. Even after 5 years, I would not swap it for anything else. So in conclusion, in my honest opinion, keep the bike standard, sort out those little bits that we mentioned earlier, do the regular maintenance, and you will have you know, close to zero issues with this bike. It's amazing character. You'll be rewarded with you know, amazing experiences in return and memories, and you'll definitely fall in love with this bike. So if you have any questions about general maintenance or you're curious about other things about the bike, just drop me a comment and I'll come back to you. In the meantime, please subscribe, make sure you click that bell button to stay up to date with our latest videos, and stay safe, rubber side down, and I'll see you on the next one.